Thank you very much, Bex. She did a great job with the introductions, but I got to do it again. Jay Walton.
I'm Brandon Cookta.
We're from John McNeil's studio in Berkeley, California, which you can see is a really nice place to be. We are a creative studio. That's what we call ourselves. We're a little bit like an advertising agency, with the key difference being we do everything internally. We don't send anything out. And so we've got such a wide range of capabilities, from marketing, branding, strategy, design, really good editorial capability, marketing automation, demand generation. But I think the sort of the biggest part, the best part, I'm a little biased, is a group of 30 and getting up there, maybe towards 40 folks that make up a group we call Motion and Image, or M&I.
So M&I operates a bit like a post-production studio that sits inside of John McNeil's studio. So sort of any ideas or concepts that the studio comes up with, we execute inside of Motion and Image. So we really do everything across the sort of post-production realm, from like visual effects to motion graphics to 3D animation, finishing stuff like titling and color grading.
So let's look at the reel and see what we do. So that's us. We wanted to come and talk about a project that we wrapped a few months ago called Deception Force. We have a really great client called Juniper Networks, and they have some really great solutions in the data center security market. And that may not sound sexy to a lot of us. We're looking at feature films, but if you own a data center, that's probably the most important thing to you. Yeah. So what a lot of companies do, as security companies do, is focus on building a thicker firewall. And Juniper's solution sort of turned that logic around. And we looked at the technology and thought it was sort of the stuff of science fiction, and figured we could maybe do a better job of presenting that story in a really unique way. If a hacker's trying to get in, this is me being a hacker, is trying to get into your data center, he's trying to access certain directories or files. The system will actually throw up false directories and make you think that you're getting someplace. And what it's actually doing is just leading that hacker along until it can get a device-level fingerprint for that exact computer. So it's not an IP address that can be spoofed. If this guy wants to try to hurt this company again, he's got to buy a new laptop. But even more than that, that gets uploaded to a central database, and now all Juniper customers are protected from this bad actor. So again, seeing the way they approach the technology made us feel like it deserved a different way of marketing it. And so that is sort of what we came up with Deception Force.
So we decided as a core part of this marketing strategy to really tie all of the security technology into a game, with the idea that this is a really proactive method of fighting intrusion into a data center. So we really put the security professional in this scenario where they're in a data center, they're utilizing the software, and they're going after these bad guys, these different types of attacks that exist in the data center. Additionally, besides the game, we also built a website that the advertising would drive to. It would give people the opportunity to download the game both on the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store, as well as feature a sort of a cinematic trailer that would really help to tell this whole story and wrap it up.
And if you think, just going back to the mobile game, if you think to our core audience, and and what they're like and what they're about. They're never at their computer. They're mobile all the time. If you're going to get to them, you got to show you can kind of talk to them where they live, and where they live is on their mobile phone. So that's why we didn't make a desktop game or a console game. We had to make it a mobile game, something that they'd be able to get while they're, eating a ham sandwich. But let's watch the trailer. This is basically the story of a guy showing up to his first day of work at a IT security job, and then finding out he's in for a lot more than he was bargaining.
In back.
Welcome to Deception Force.
I'm Scott.
That's nice.
So this is it.
What'd you expect, Mongolian barbecue?
I'm here for the IT job.
Just suit up. You'll catch on.
Damn it, kid, get your visor down. You can't see without it. Whoa. Watch your back. Coming back for you. Scott, we got trouble in Sector 4. Get there quick. Copy that. On my way. Watch that stinger!
So those were the three main things we ended up producing: a website, a trailer, a game, and those were the finished products. But if you step back from that to the beginning of when we got this assignment, one of the things that we knew was going to be a challenge is that we knew we had to produce these three things. We knew we needed to produce them at a very high quality. But starting from just sort of concept approval to really no script yet, we had 3 months total in order to complete all this work.
And for a smaller studio like we are, that's a big challenge for us. I know that was a little pit in my stomach for a little bit. Yeah. But it came together really well, and I think a lot of the reason that we're here is because the Foundry's products played a key role in allowing a smaller place like us to be able to produce that much work in that period of time. Of course, we started writing script right away. I think we had a script in a couple of weeks, and that's to get script approval in a couple of weeks is fast. Yeah. But then if you think about a 3-month project, and then you go, oh, I only have 2.5 months now to make this thing, it was really important that we work quickly. And so one of the things we did right away while the writer was writing is think about what this game should, and what this trailer should feel like. And so we started with some concept paintings over the first few days. one of the things that we decided very early on, although some of these elements made it into the final trailer, is that we wanted a constant reminder of exactly where we are. You're in the middle of a data center. We felt like there should be a constant reminder of technology. This is what you're defending, after all. And that's what our core audience is really interested in, is protecting their data center. So we ended up with a more sort of technology approach for the environment. But we changed tactics when it came to the creatures. Originally, we thought the creatures would be more like robots. We've got enough technology in this thing, and after all, hackers are people. They're bad people, if I'm being judgmental. But we decided to go with a more organic characters, and so I think you were able to see that in the trailer itself.
So Nuke, as a studio, we've been using Nuke for about 5 years now, and it really plays a major role in any compositing job that we do. And this job was no exception. We rely on it, a lot for paint work, a lot for compositing. In this particular shot, this was really when we were starting to set the look and feel that would carry us throughout the whole piece. We used Nuke in here to bring in a lot of these elements, pull them together. The artist that was working on this just got off working on a sci-fi feature that had lots and lots of lens flares, so he brought a little bit of that with him, I think, in setting the look and feel of this.
He really did.
And we also use Nuke for compositing some of the live action shots too. So, in this shot, we were shooting in a green screen room.
Very small green screen room.
Yeah, it was a really small green screen room. There was a crane shot that we used the camera tracker for. And sort of built out the mat to composite the people, in the 3D scene.
And Mari for us was sort of a new addition. You've been using Nuke for a while. We've certainly been using MODO for a long time, but Mari was something new. We knew Deception Force was going to be coming, and we knew we needed really good texture painting. And so from everything we'd heard and all the reviews we've seen, Mari was it for texture painting. And as it turns out, has been a really great addition to our pipeline and something we've continued to use all along. I think one of the best things we got from the Foundry was one of their demo artists, Nicole Keene, who came in and, being familiar with the software already, was able to give us really a leg up on understanding it. But she loved the idea that you can have procedural textures that go with photographic textures. You can layer them on top of each other and really have a lot of combinations. The brushes right out of the box are really nice to work with, and so we were able to get a lot of detail and a lot into our characters in a really short period of time with really a new piece of software for us.
Yeah.
I think the star of the show for this, for sure, is MODO, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. We've been using MODO for a long time. Jay and I think, picked up MODO at about version 202.
Yeah.
Better part of a decade ago.
That's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. We'd used other pieces of 3D software before that. We used Maya a bit. We used Blender for a project.
If your company will only buy you Blender, then you're at the wrong company, is what we decided. It's good software, but you got to be able to buy something at some point.
It's true. Over the years, we've relied on MODO really heavily primarily to come up with something that looks good really quick. In our job, we're often challenged to come up with, whether it's in concepting or creative development, coming up with something that we can present to a client that looks really awesome in a very short period of time. So we relied on MODO for all the 3D stuff that you saw in this short film. Everything from the modeling to the animation to the rendering was all done in MODO.
And our use of MODO is expected in our studio. I mean, that's sort of our go-to app for anything 3D. It's not controversial to say we're going to use MODO for this. It was controversial to say we're only going to use MODO for this project. Before, our typical pipeline was to model in MODO, UV in MODO. We'd go over to Maya for rigging and animation, and then we'd use point oven to come back to MODO for lighting, shading, and texturing. And that workflow worked really well for us. I think it was expected that we would do that, but 701 had just come out. We have a lot of confidence in the development team, for MODO and in the Foundry. So we decided to give it a little test. We brought in a really talented animator named Gabriel Hernandez, and he only knew Maya. And we gave him the sort of Captain America-looking character that's on the share site on the Foundry community page, and said, make something cool, and let's see. Because we weren't sure, are we going to make a suit, or are we going to do this all in animation? And Within a couple of days, I walked by. I got other things to do, so I walked by and saw what he was doing, and he had in a couple of days Captain America, a new app for him, running along a building, jumping down, kind of rolling, and then getting into a defensive pose. It looked great, and so I was able to make a decision really quickly, which is important in a tight deadline. Not only are we not making a suit, we're not using Maya for any of this. We're going to trust the rigging and character animation tools in MODO 701 to be able to do this whole thing. In the end, we had 6 animators working on this full time. All of them complained, but that's what animators do. The rig's not good enough. I don't have enough time. But in the end, within a day or two, they were all able to produce really great work. And so it helped us to see that really a lot of animation is the art of things moving and having really great poses and fluid motion between those things. So if you can animate in Maya or Softimage, you can learn. Softimage, you're going to have to learn something else, but you're going to be able to learn another app for animation, and these guys picked up MODO just great. There's some advantages to the MODO pipeline for animation that they really like too.
So one of the things we relied on heavily in MODO in this particular project was the use of replicators. So the whole scene was built out with the exception of the characters as just a bunch of replicators. So what that allowed us to do is have really, really high detailed geometry for the servers, for the lights, for the floor, and then without taking up a ton of memory, replicate that out throughout the whole scene and create a bit of variation along the way.
Again, we talked about the animation tools. The rigging tools we thought were really great. We were able to use the ACS tool that Lucas put together. This rig was pretty workable in about an hour. We did a little fine tuning afterwards, but we were able to get a really good rig in a really short period of time and then get into blocking really quickly in a way that actually I could see some movement, which was really helpful. It's really easy to adjust the guides in this and fine-tune things so you don't get knee popping and that kind of thing. But for sure, for us, the reason we've been so loyal to MODO over the years is this. It's the render and it's the preview render. I think you'd agree.
Yeah. So on this, we rely on the preview render all the time. It's one of these things. It's one of the things in MODO that will get us to something that looks really good really quickly. In this particular example, I think you'll see they're adjusting some subsurface scattering, having the ability to sort of paint that in. I don't know if you could see that. You can, as you're looking at the preview render, you can sort of paint in where you want to focus on with your mouse, which is great, because usually when you're adjusting things, you're really looking at a specific area, trying to figure out how subsurface scattering works there, how a light reflects off of it.
And it makes me feel like I'm doing the rendering when I move the mouse around.
Exactly.
I like that.
Another thing we do here a lot is use the preview render to check out animation. So if you knew that you're going on lunch, you're going to be back in 45 minutes, you can set the preview render to kick out the best animation of your sequence that it possibly can in 45 minutes. You come back, you're going to get a decent preview of how your character looks, how the lighting looks as it's running through a scene, and be able to pick up and move on from there.
And we feel like this is kind of our secret weapon. This is how we compete with bigger studios, is to be able to get looks really quickly and go. Everybody's interested in render speed. I mean, anyone who's ever waited for a render to finish, I think everyone in this building is interested in render speed. But Brad mentioned this a few years ago, and I thought it was a really nice point. There's a lot of factors that contribute to render speed. One of them is how efficient is the program? Are the ones and zeros in just the right order to be able to be a really efficient renderer? And then there's render tuning. So I need exposed to me enough controls to be able to make this really efficient render work really well for my particular scene. But this is machine time, and I can deal with I don't have to deal with machine time with MODO, but I can deal with that. It's the human factor that I think often goes unnoticed or underappreciated. So the human factor is from start to my last render, how long does that take? And so we call that 0 to awesome. And for us, MODO is the way we get from 0 to awesome the fastest. Having worked in a MODO-rich environment for a while, and then going to a RenderMan studio for a year, and then being in a MODO-rich environment again, the difference is impressive to me. That you've got, instead of lighting for half a day, you're lighting for half an hour. And when you're a small studio, that's such a big deal. And it's, we have these talented artists that are sort of banging their heads against a really good renderer, but a bad fit. And so finding the right rendering software that's going to work for you and help you to be really efficient is so important. So that's kind of our big factor, why we love MODO so much, is the 0 to awesome factor.
So this, the game we used was built inside of Unity, and MODO played a big part in that. So all the assets that went into the game were created in MODO. So this level was modeled in MODO. All the levels were modeled in MODO. All the characters were built in MODO. We used MODO to take the high resolution geometry and bake a lot of that detail into low resolution geometry that could be used in the game. And all the animated sequences, all the character attacks, all the character deaths, were all animated in MODO as well.
This guy looks like a boss. I think we can all agree. This is just some of the tchotchkes that the clients dig. I mean, they may like this more than the trailer, but when they went to this big security conference called RSA, they were able to kind of get behind a character green screen. They loved it. They were able to go to the website and kind of get their face inside of the suit. I mean, whether their face looks like this or not, I don't know. And then this is RSA. So for the security world, it's at least SIGGRAPH. We were able to set up on these little plinths a competition so that people could actually see who could get the highest score in Deception Force, and we got a ton of eyeballs. And we're in the middle of a showroom floor right now. Everybody has a bullhorn. They all want more sales. And sometimes the solution is not to get a bigger bullhorn. Sometimes the solution is to find a different way to tell the story about a transformative technology in a way that sort of befits the ingenuity that they put into the product. So this was really a big win for us, and really a big win for Juniper, which was our main goal.
Right. A big part of what let this project happen for us is Steve.
That's Jeff.
Who's not the guy in the front here, but it's what we call our render farm. One of the cool things about MODO from our perspective is that it allows you to have unlimited render nodes. So as a small studio, we don't have the resources really to get a render farm locally, a 20 node or 40 node render farm. And even if we did, that really wouldn't have helped us out that much on this project. So what we did was put together a series of scripts. We sort of paired this idea of unlimited render nodes with Amazon's EC2 cloud, which allows you to spin up virtually unlimited machines. Put those two together, and for this project, at any given time, we could have 400 machines running, processing frames. And I think over the course of this project, we put in at least 15,000 render hours.
And that's in less than 2 weeks. That's a lot of rendering.
Yeah, and there's no way. I mean, a lot of these frames took probably upwards of an hour to render.
Sure.
A lot of motion blur, a lot of subsurface scattering, a lot of depth of field.
I don't want to render tune that bad. I want to get it onto the farm and move on to the next shot, because it's the human cost.
Right.
I think building on what Brandon was saying, to me this is a good example of what it takes to compete as a smaller studio. Can you compete with a bigger place? And the answer is yes. You can compete on quality if you're talented, and then if you're smart, you can compete on price and actually find an advantage for yourself. But you need to sort of embrace your size. And so you may find out that DreamWorks wrote their own version of Shotgun, and that might make sense. They have the scale to have that make sense. That may not make sense for a 5 or 10 person studio. You have to make sure that your solutions fit the size that you are. And so, it's like LeBron James is this crazy good basketball. I like Kobe, but whatever. He's old, like me. But, LeBron can jump through the roof and go around through guys, and you think, oh man, if I could just wear his exact sneakers, I'd probably jump that high, and I'd play that good. And it's stupid, because it doesn't work like that. If you were to steal his sneakers, which I don't recommend, he has like a size 1,000,000 foot, and you're going to flop around on the basketball court and look like a moron. And the same thing is true when it comes to finding software that fits the size of your team. You got to make sure, I love Pixar's movies, we all do. Some think they're the best in the world. And you think, oh, if I only had their renderer, I'd make movies that look like that. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, because they got 3,000 or 4,000 people to support that kind of infrastructure. And if you're a 10 or 20 or 30 person studio, you may flop around and kind of fail a little bit. And if you can you go into the shoe store and you want shoes that fit you. And so for a smaller studio like we are, MODO fits us really, really, really well. And we think, again, it sort of gives us a competitive advantage. It's our secret weapon.
Yeah.
Since then, we've been really busy.
Oh, it's true. So the Deception Force game went over really well, so we started working on a game internally. More on that later. This is an example of a campaign we utilized MODO heavily in. You may have seen this. It's running on a lot of airports, so maybe on your way to SIGGRAPH. This was the CA logo was rendered in MODO. This was built in a combination of MODO and Mari.
Really helpful, Mari.
Used Mari a lot in this one.
Japan.
You know, again, a lot of MODO work in this particular campaign.
This one was a really good story, I thought. It just deserves a minute. These are all 15,000 pixel renders that need to go really large format, in an airport. And MODO's great at chewing through really large renders. This was a Tuesday morning. Anytime you do a really big CG, rendering like this, a lot of the complaint about 3D is it looks too perfect. And so you're going to have to do some texture painting. If it's a still, you're going to do it after the render if you're smart. So we didn't have time to do that. We sent it out to one of our matte painters named Sam on a Tuesday morning, and he said, I like this, it's great, but this is the thing about CG, it's just too perfect. And I said, Sam, you got to cut us some slack. I got this assignment Friday night, and we modeled and textured and lit and rendered this thing, and it's 15,000 pixels. And he said, whoa, how did you do all of that in 3 days? And he said, oh man, I should have learned 3D. And I said, bro, you tried to learn 3D, but you banged your head against Maya for 2 years and decided it was too much for you, and you gave up. But every software, you hear this sometimes here, every software has a valley of pain. We have found MODO's valley of pain to be very small and very shallow. And so you're just a few weeks away from making really cool stuff in MODO. Anyway, that's our presentation. I guess we have time for some questions if Bex thinks so. Oh, Brad thinks so.
I think so. We have to crowd in here together, though.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's cuddle.
Slide in here a little bit. All right. So, not to imply that IT professionals just sit around and play video games all day.
No, they sure don't.
We're not saying that, IT professionals. I will say one of our IT professionals does have an automatic weapon. He has literally an AK. So I can imagine that going into this game would be very cathartic to have to go and to do some destruction. This seems, I watched your presentation, and you mentioned earlier that you guys do the work of basically a studio, right, but you're a complete advertising agency. I think that's really interesting, particularly because it's really kind of a new world in advertising, right? I mean, it used to be print, TV. Now there's all these different media. How do you guys keep up, and how do you keep ahead of it, and how do you go to someone like Juniper and say, hey, we're going to make a video game, and they say yes? How does that work? Well,
I mean, it starts with having a great client, and a great client relationship where they really trust you and you really trust them was key for Juniper buying off on this. They wanted a great presence at RSA, and they were confident that we'd be able to deliver that. I think you're right about the agency model changing. If you think about advertising agency, what that means is that you come up with an idea and then you find some company that you hope is going to be good to execute that. And so I think where advertising's changing, and I think where JMS is sort of ahead of the curve, is having control not over the creative idea, but also over its execution. And so, that gives us a lot of advantages in picking something. Hey, if the timeline is reduced, we're going to come up with an idea that we can actually execute really well and is going to work well. So it's great for us.
And I think in terms of the shift away from print, I think a lot of the tools we've been using have made that shift with us, right? So we were actually started off learning MODO when we were doing retouching, primarily on print projects. And then slowly, as we learn more about 3D, learn more about animation, some of the tools evolved with us, right? So MODO gained animation along the same time we were learning to do animation.
Let's animate stuff.
And as the primary work we've been doing has shifted from print to digital, our tools and our techniques have shifted along with it.
Right, and I imagine I was in Chicago years ago talking to an old friend, Chris Morris, and he was talking about their migration because of outdoor advertising moving to screens.
Yeah.
And so you walk up to a bus stop and it's no longer just a piece of paper, it's a little movie.
Right.
So, crazy times. Watching your Mari painting your little ball of teeth there, I wondered, it looked like maybe there was a blend of procedural and painted. How do you decide, to go procedural, to go hand-painted texture, or is it just up to the artist and what they're trying to get done?
Well, I think that's the cool thing about Mari, being able to take some of the technical nonsense you would have to go through otherwise and just being able to be an artist. So that's the cool thing. I don't think, how do creative decisions happen. You sort of play with this, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then you take a step back and go, oh, actually, that looks pretty cool. We should go with that. So I think Mari actually allowed us to play a lot, and I think that's where a lot of those decisions happen. It wasn't really a strategic decision as much as just sort of part of the creative process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned that Mari really gives you that sort of artistic creative freedom, because I think initially, because the big deal about Mari is UDIMs and infinite textures, literally or nearly, that people tend to focus on the technology of it, and really all that technology does is make it super easy.
Right.
Just don't think about all that. Just paint. Okay, so I was watching very closely your MODO screens and looking for things and how you set stuff up, and I saw some .lxp references in there. Do you guys use, that's our preset file format. Do you guys use a lot of presets in your production workflow? Is that a big part of your process?
We did it with this particular series because we, a lot of these textures that we came up with, we wanted to share. We divided all these shots up, had different artists working on lighting, different artists working on texturing. But whenever we came up with a texture for a particular element, be that a server or a wall or the floor, and even different elements of those lights, we stored all those presets in one centralized location. I think even versioned them so that any artist, when they were working on a particular shot, could just go there, drag in a whole set of preset textures, and it retextures everything. And if we needed to go and tweak one of those elements, we would just update that set of presets across all the shots.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's a bit unique about MODO that's not obvious is that the texturing is sort of decoupled from the geometry by using the mask. So you can just have geometry popped in and then drop in some textures and they can flow right through. So there's some internet questions. I was going to ask you about your cloud rendering, and then you guys showed it, which I thought was cool. And I know you guys did that originally for your Intel projects, right? I was going to ask you on that. You mentioned 15,000 hours of rendering. What does that translate into dollars? Do you have any idea what you spent on that?
On the Amazon?
On the actual rendering component, yeah.
If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably about $15,000.
Yeah.
The coolest thing, right next door is a cloud rendering booth. And we thought, do you want to be in the software business? And as a smaller place, you have to decide that. We found, and it's cool technology, but we found out it was $185 per node. And then when we multiply that out, that's 70 grand or 75 grand. We don't have to pay anything for that. So we are just paying Amazon for their machines running only when we want them to, and that's it.
I remember when you guys did the Intel project and I came over and was talking to you about it, and I think at the time you said, I don't remember the specific dollar amounts, but it was basically you rendered all those commercials for the price of 2 computers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable. It's a really interesting shift. But from a logistical standpoint, pushing all the data up, pulling all the data back down, was there a lot of management you had to do with that? In terms of pulling down all those frames, was it just something you'd just do overnight and not worry about? And also, like if you had a shot, you sent it up and it's cooking, then you want to make a change, is it a problem to upload all the data, or is it you just upload it one place and distribute it from there?
It didn't, as with any render farm, I think there was some babysitting that was necessary. So someone to submit the job, someone to make sure the jobs were running properly, and someone to make sure they were coming back okay. We had the frames as they were rendered syncing real time back to our server. But the overhead of that, because it's not all going up at once, it's not all coming down at once, the overhead of that wasn't really that high. And I don't remember it being a bottleneck at any point.
Well, 3D scenes aren't that big. And if you can get the frames done as they're going rather than all at one time, then you're fine.
And I guess also having all the artists using the same texture library basically means you put the library up once, and so long as nobody goes outside that library, the assets are there, so you're good.
Right.
So someone did ask about the auto character setup, and then you guys revealed that yes, you're using ACS, as you called it, is the auto character setup kit from Lucas Pizzera, which is available on our website. There was another internet question that was related to, they're very impressed with the modeling in MODO from what they've seen what you've done, and they were asking about sculpting in MODO. Do you guys use the sculpting much in MODO at all?
Yeah, most of the sculpting happened in at least the character design happened in ZBrush. But yeah, we sure do. It's often part of the modeling process. Again, everything's perfect. How do I make it slightly not perfect? And maybe transforms aren't the best way to do that, but sculpting absolutely can be. No, we use it a lot. And having really good sculpting makes modeling that much easier. Absolutely, yeah, I agree. Sculpting more and more is a part of it should just be a part of the actual toolkit. It's just what you do. And multi-resolution sculpting is kind of a different thing, and you can do that in MODO as well, but just having the ability to massage a mesh with sculpting tools. And I will add to that answer that you guys using ZBrush, we work closely with Pixelogic to make sure GoZ works well. We were the first application to support a GoZ workflow between MODO and ZBrush, so we absolutely will continue to support that process. Let's see, do we have any more internet questions?
There's 2 more. So, the first one is, how much time was saved switching from PR Man to MODO? Are you relieved not to have to write shaders, AOVs?
Well, to be clear, when I was in a RenderMan studio, that was actually a different company. It's actually a fair question. because I would watch scenes getting lit, and just knowing that the lighting, texturing, and rendering for that is probably, that's a 20-minute job, or that's a 1-hour job. And when you see jobs go for a day or 2 days or 3 days, not that they look bad, but you just can't quite get lighting approval. There's just the frustration that kind of comes from that. Why aren't you going faster? Why are you so picky? And if you can just get rid of all of that because you've got a preview render that is deeply integrated into the program, you solve a lot of those problems. So no, I actually, it's not apples to apples within JMS, but I can just say, from my experience, massive. To say 10 times faster, sometimes it's less and sometimes it's more, but that's my gut, I guess.
I would add to that, using your floppy shoe reference, that they're kind of, in a sense, they're kind of different beasts. It's like saying, which is faster, a Ferrari or a Mack truck? Yeah. Well, the Ferrari's faster, but when you need to haul something, you're going to get in the Mack truck, right? So sometimes PR Man is the right tool for the job.
Absolutely.
And sometimes a tool like MODO is the right tool for the job.
That team I was on before was a smaller team, and it was just a tough fit.
Yeah, and luckily, if you need Katana and PR Man, we got you covered.
It works.
You need the speed of MODO, we got you covered.
Exactly. And there's another one. How interoperable was MODO with Unity?
Oh, great.
Yeah, it was really solid. I know that the LXOs, I think, come in right away. So I think our game developers were able to just pull those in directly. I think all the animation was exported as FBX from MODO.
Which is fine.
And pulled right into Unity. So it's a really fluid process of getting all the assets into Unity.
Another one of our great partners, the Unity team. There you go.
Okay, so round of applause for the guys. Thank you so much.